and I'm here to share a hybrid process video with you using the Alie October 2018 Digital Stories by the Month kit. Now this kit is very October themed. It's got trick-or-treat stuff, Halloween. I don't have very many Halloween embellishments, and so I'm going to make my own today using these digital chipboard pieces. And I have them all open here. You have to open them each individually because they're each in their own separate file. And you can see as they come in here, when I click on the shape, the bounding box is a square. And that's going to affect the way that we're going to do this today. So I want you to just be aware of it. If you have shapes that come in like this with squares around them, you're gonna have to just take a little extra step. It's not a big deal, but it's something that you just need to be aware of. So I've opened all the pieces and I've copied and pasted them all into this one document and kind of arranged them. And now what I need to do is go ahead and get these using, I need them to be able to cut out, right? So when I go to the send window right now, if I choose the shapes and I choose cut, you can see it's going to cut the square bounding boxes. It's not cutting around the shape, it's just cutting around that square bounding box. And so that's not what I want to do. So what I'm going to do is go back to design. I'm going to go to the trace window. I'm going to choose select trace area, and I'm going to drag over all of those pieces. Let me just zoom in a little so you can see better. Now you can see that not all of the shapes are turning yellow. That means that some of the shapes are lighter and we need to be able to include the lighter values. So we're going to up the threshold until it includes all of the pieces that we want it to. And we just want it to be sure that it's going around all the edges. So here's what we want to do. If we just hit trace, it's going to trace and it's going to cut these inside pieces. That's okay. If you want it to cut out the insides, that's fine. Or we can choose instead, let me just undo. We can choose trace outer edge, and then we've got the pieces right here. We've got just the outline of the pieces. So that's what we're going to do. I want to do an offset, so we just need to make sure that we select the right pieces when we're doing the offset window, because I want to show you something that I came across as I was trying to do this. So I went to the offset window. I dragged my bounding box over all of the shapes, and I chose offset. And you can see that those square bounding boxes are still around the shapes, and that is not what I want. I don't want to offset those shapes, just the inner shapes. And so instead, see, I applied it and now it's got this big outline. That's not what I want. So instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the entire cut file piece. There we go. And I'm going to offset those pieces. So when I choose offset now, it's only doing the pieces that are there. So don't drag your box around the shapes if you have, if they come in with those square boxes around them. So the first thing I want to do is choose corner, because I don't want my edges to be rounded. And then I'm going to dial this back a little bit. I just want a small border. Sometimes it takes a second for your computer to catch up to your clicking, so I like to do it slowly because I always go too far because I'm impatient. Okay, so there is just a small border around each one, and I'm going to click apply. All right, and now I'm going to move this back up to where it belongs in that box there. Now I have an offset of all of those traced pieces, and I want to delete the original cut lines that I did when the one that I traced when I traced around it. So I'm just going to choose that cut line again. I'm just trying to make sure I choose the right piece and hit delete. And now I have the shape and there is a little white outline, and that's exactly what I want it to be.
So I wanted to hurry and jump in here and just show you that you can do the same thing with these shapes, but have it be an internal offset rather than an offset from the shape. So I've got 3 shapes here. I've already traced them, and you can see that they have this this little outline. Those are the traced shapes around each individual piece. I'm just going backwards there. So now instead of doing offset to get an outline around it, you can do internal offset, and that's going to cut inside of those lines. So then what I would do is just make the distance a little bit smaller until I had the shape that I liked and made sure that none of the pieces on the inside are getting cut off. And basically what this is going to do is create a bleed for you so that when you print it out and you cut it, it will cut within those lines. So even if it's a little bit off, you won't get a white edge because you have that bleed going on.
I've got that taken care of, and now I'm going to turn on my registration marks. Actually, before I do that, there was one other piece that I wanted to create a little cut file out of, and it's this Happy Halloween. So I'm going to do a similar thing. I'm going to go to the trace window. I am going to choose select trace area. I'm going to trace around this shape. I'm going to up the threshold so it makes sure it gets all the little pieces it's supposed to. Instead of trace outside edge, I'm going to choose trace because then I have the piece. I don't need that original. Now I have this piece. I'm going to zoom in on it for you because I do want it to still have that outline, the black outline, but I also want to fill the shapes with color. And so right now this is all one piece, and if I go to the fill window, I'm going to choose a fill color from one of these other pieces, and I think I want to do that color, the orangey yellow. And if I go to fill this in, you can see it just fills in that outer edge. And I'm going to choose under line color, I can go ahead and choose black. Actually, I don't want there to be a line color, I don't think. So I'm going to choose none. Now this is going to be orange, but the inside won't be colored in. That's not what I want. I want the inside pieces colored in, and I want the outside pieces to be black. So what I really want to do is have my fill color be black. That's going to give it, that looks just like it did before I traced it, right? But I want to be able to fill in the middles, and right now I can't do that. So what I need to do is ungroup these. Actually, I'm going to have to release the compound path. So I'm going to choose release compound path, and you can see that it fills the entire thing with black. But when I go to select each shape, I'm going to click on the inside of the shape, and I'll choose fill with this orange color, and that's going to give me what I want. Okay, so you just have to make sure you choose, or you go ahead and release the compound path. Sorry, my brain isn't working today. So I'm just going to fill in all these colors. Now, if I wanted to, I could go ahead now too and click on these inside shapes, and I could fill those with white. So I have a nice clean looking piece, or you could leave them black. I kind of like the way it looks black too, but I think I'll go ahead and change them to white. And let's fill in these last couple. The thing after this that we just need to make sure is that it's only going to cut where we want it to. So that's the next thing I'm going to check. So there I've got it. I'm going to group it together so that I've got it just one piece now. And let's go ahead and when I go to send, let's see what it's cutting out. So I'm going to zoom in. Do you see how it's cutting out the inner part as well? I do not want it to do that. If I just choose cut edge, it's only going to cut around the outside. Do you see that? Sometimes that works and sometimes it doesn't. I'm not sure exactly why. I don't know. But I don't mind that it's not going to cut out the centers. But if you do, what you'll want to do is while it's still ungrouped, I'll go back and show you. I'm going to ungroup it. And what I'll do is that inner line, I can just click on the inside of each shape. This is a little bit more time consuming, but it just all depends on what you want. You can do so much with this, and maybe there's easier ways. I've just taught myself the ways that, that I know. And you can go to send, and you can choose no cut on that inside part. Let's zoom in a little bit. Okay, so now it's only cutting the outer edge. Now I can choose these inner pieces. now and say that I want to cut those, and it's only going to cut out within those lines. Okay, I'm going to zoom in just a little bit more to make sure it's only doing one cut line around the outside. It is, it just looks thick. I don't know why, but now I've got it to where it's going to cut the outside. Oops, let's go back. See, it's going to cut the outside edge and it's going to cut out the centers as well. And that's what I do want. So I am good with that. I'm going to go ahead and go back to design. I am going to select this entire thing and I'm going to put it onto my other document so I can print them out together. And look how cute that's going to look together. I love it. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and turn on the registration marks because we're ready to print and cut this out. So I'm going to go back to the page setup. I'm going to go to the registration marks window. I'm going to turn it on. And because I have chosen an 8.5 by 11, it will go ahead and turn that on. Now you can move this bottom piece up if you want to, or you can print off more things that you want to cut out. I might just throw a few more things on here before I cut this, but basically I'm going to go ahead and print this on some Epson premium presentation paper in a matte finish. So it's basically photo paper that's kind of like cardstock. The colors are more vibrant that way. And then I'm also going to cut it out of a super thick cover stock cardstock to make my little embellishments. So I'll come back to you when I've reached that point. Okay, so here I have them print and cut out. I also cut them out twice from a super heavy cardstock. This cardstock is my absolute favorite smooth cardstock, and it is from cutcardstock.com. I'll link it in the video description, but it's 130 pound. It's very thick. And I cut it twice out of this cardstock. So
I wanted to just pop in again and let you know the settings I used for cutting out that thick cardstock because I had a lot of questions about it on Instagram. So when I went to the send window, I set my material at cover stock, which is a heavy paperweight. It says 105 to 122 pound. Mine is actually 130 pound, but this worked for me. And so I set my blade at 7. I did up the speed. 1 takes forever. So I upped it to 5, and then I left it on 2 passes, which means it's going to cut it out once, and then it's going to cut around that same line twice. And I think that's very helpful with a very thick cardstock. That worked perfectly. You could also do the same thing with a very thin chipboard. I know Silhouette sells a thin chipboard, or at least they used to, but I found that this heavyweight paper works just as well, and it was really easy to do. So just wanted to pop in and let you know the settings that I used for that.
I'm not going to make you watch me put all these together, but that's what I'm going to do. I wanted to show you one though so that you can see how they compare to a regular chipboard piece. So I just have all the pieces matched up so you can see there's the top piece, which is on a thin paper, which is the photo paper that I mentioned, the Epson Premium Presentation paper, and then 2 of the circles that are from the cardstock that I cut out. And so they are, I'll just show you in reference, they are just about as thick as a chipboard piece. It doesn't look exactly the same, obviously, but it is going to have that effect of the dimension of a chipboard piece, which I like. So I'm gonna go ahead and glue all these together. I'm just gonna use my Scotch Quick Dry adhesive that I have in my fine line bottle and glue these with liquid glue, and then I'll come back and we'll start the process of putting a page together. Alrighty, so here are my pieces all done. I've glued the 3 layers together. They're nice and sturdy, like really sturdy and thick, which I love. I love the way the title came out. I'm excited to use that. I wanted to show you how they compare to the regular chipboard shapes that you get in Alie's kits or that you can buy on her website. They have the same like footprint or shapes as existing why I can't speak today. They have the same shapes as the existing chipboards that she does. So she has like a few different ones that she rotates through. And so you can see the September shapes are the same as this one that we just got in the November Stories by the Month kit, which is brand new. And then this is from the travel kit that she did, the chipboard kit. And this is the same, these are the same shapes as those ones. And so you can see on these particular chipboard sheets, they've got an inset rather than an offset. So my shapes have a white border around them, and these ones have a colored border around them. That's called a bleed, and that way it cuts around the shape, and then if it's a little bit off, it doesn't matter because there's color going off the edges. So if you were to cut right up against the edge, sometimes it gets off and you get a little white space. But so if these are the same size as these before you inset or offset it, and so if you wanted them to be smaller and if you wanted them to be this same size, you would just do an inset instead of an offset like I've done here. So these are slightly bigger because I did the offset, and you can see the difference in these two pieces here. See the difference in the size? And if I were to put this on here, you can see that if I would have done an inset instead, there's just a little border of color here, so I could get it to be the same size if I wanted it to. So just wanted to show that to you and point that out. I'm going to be using these pieces on my layout today, and let's go ahead and get started with that. It's Jen, and I wanted to show you the layouts that I ended up creating with the little printable faux chipboards that I created with the Alie Edwards October 2018 Digital Stories by the Month kit. So I had 3 photos and I couldn't decide which one to do, so I just decided to do all 3, and I thought I would just quickly do a layout share. I didn't do a process video for it because I wanted to do the tutorial on the printing cuts with the printables, and so I just thought I would quickly show you these and go over them a little bit. So this is the photo of me and my brother, Halloween 1993. And he was dressed up as a princess because my mom was out of town and my dad thought that would be funny. And he was totally happy being a princess, and I was super embarrassed for him and by my dad. I thought it was embarrassing. Anyway, now it's just funny, but I used the letters that I ended up cutting out for the title on this one, and then I used a bunch of the pieces. I kind of kept the same formula on all 3 of my layouts a little bit, and you'll see that, but I just used the pieces kind of in a line down the center because I like to use word strips that way. And so I used, some of the pieces are the ones that were the printables, some of them are stickers. I have some white ones, some black ones, and some dark blue that I wanted to bring in to tie in that word costumes. And then I just used a couple of scraps from my pattern paper. This is a 3x4 card from, I think it was from a Week in the Life kit, or maybe December Daily, I can't remember. But it just has stars on it, light gray. It matches everything. And then these little puffy stars are from the Light Story kit. And so I just used a bunch of those on here, and I thought they worked well. Now, something that I use a ton is my Then and Now stamp set. This is one of the first story kits that Alie did, and I use the Now and Then stamps. You can see they're the ones that are used and kind of falling everywhere for layouts that are older. So you can see here I stamped Then 1993, Now 2018. And if you're wondering how I did the date with a roller stamp, I used Alie's this is the time stamp, and I just did 19 and stamped that, and then I did 93 and stamped it next to it because there is a little space between the numbers here for you to do like a dot or a slash or whatever. So I hope that makes sense. Anyway, that's what I used to stamp my date. And then the rest, I did pull in random chipboard pieces and different things from other past story kits as they worked. The other thing that I did was I used stamps, and I made them look like the printables by gluing them to the same thick cardstock and stacking them up. So this is just something I stamped on an orange piece of paper because I wanted to bring in another pop of that brighter orange, and I white heat embossed it, and then I popped it up with those 2 sheets of thick cardstock like I did with these. Okay, so that's my first layout. You can see the stitching. I liked that added detail of the black stitching. I think it gives a little contrast, and this layout's otherwise very simple. It's just very white and clean, and I love doing layouts like that sometimes. And all 3 of these layouts I just started with a white base because I was just trying to make things easy on myself. So next, second layout I created, oh, I forgot to mention, but these are the pieces that I have left over from the October Stories by the Month kit chipboard that I printed out and cut out with my silhouette. So I have a few pieces left, and that's fine. I tried to use as much as I could, but really they're just a jumping off point for me telling these stories, and I'm totally fine with that. So this one is a photo of me. I never dress up for Halloween. I don't really like to do it, and so I thought this would be a good one to document. I cut the title, Something Wicked This Way Comes, out of a 3x4 card that was from the October, the physical Stories by the Month kit. And so that worked really well for my title there. And then I used a bunch of the pieces that I had printing cut out. So I used the October, More Pumpkins Please. Actually, maybe I only used those two pieces on this particular layout. The other pieces are chipboard from the October Stories by the Month kit as well. See, I used these. So I like to mix and match things together, and it gives everything kind of a cohesive look. Oh, I did use this circle that says the 31st. That was another one that I print and cut out. So I just layered a couple of pieces of patterned paper. This is like the couple pieces of Halloween paper I actually had in my stash, and then just some scraps. And then you can see I did the same kind of thing where I did a bunch of word strips in a line. I like to do that. I think it looks nice, and it's a good way to use them. Now the other things that I used on this layout, these little puffy stars are from a kit from I think a year ago, and they were in a Stories by the Month kit. I think it was Grateful or Gratitude or something like that. And so I'm just trying to get those used up. I have a few left here, but I did use the stars here, and some of the dots. And then these little speech bubbles were from the Tech Story kit, I think. And if you look at it, you can tell that I put my journaling behind it because even with a Sharpie, when I wrote on this, it didn't stay. And maybe if I would have dried it, it would have. And I didn't want to put something on top of it to cover it up. And so I just put my journaling beneath it. And you can read it when you look at it up close, but I'm not too worried about people reading it. Most people probably won't read it anyway. They just tend to look at the pictures. And then if they do want to read it, they can look a little closer and it works. I just held the little acetate pieces onto the papers with a gold staple. So that was that one, nice and simple and done. And then the last layout that I created was the photo of my sister and her husband and their two boys coming to trick or treat us early. This one I really wanted to focus on the title because it is what my nephew said when we answered the door. He said "Schwicko Schweet," and it was the cutest thing ever. So I just wanted to make sure that that title really stood out and was a major part of the layout. And so for those, for the letters, I used these stamps from Alie's shop. I'll link to them in the video description. I can't remember what they're called right now. But these particular ones were discounted because they laid them out weird on the stamp sheet, but they're still great and easy. Like, they're the same. They're just not laid out nice and exactly straight. So I was fine to get those discounted for that purpose. I don't really care. Anyway, I did a two-tone look by I used Alie's Tillamook ink, and then I also used Distress Oxide and Ripe Persimmon, which is like this deep, almost red orange. And I just simply inked up the stamp, the top half of the stamp with this ink, and then I inked up the bottom half with the Distress Oxide and stamped it. And so that way you can get kind of an ombre or two-tone look. And so that's what I used for that. The pieces that I used from the printing cuts that I made are the Trick or Treat, and I decided to switch out the O because I did cut out an O actually, stamp and cut out an O, and instead of having it that as the O, I decided to make the Trick or Treat as the O because that also helps you realize what this is really saying. It's really saying trick or treat even though it says Schwicko Schweet. And I liked that. So in order to tie in that circle, I also added this little circle that says Boo, which was another printing cut. And then these two little word strips here were from the print and cut as well. And I did the same thing again where I did kind of a line and put word strips across, and I really liked the way that looked. Now I wanted to create another word strip in this darker orange color, but that wasn't one of the colors in the printables. I could have, if I wanted to and thought ahead, I could have changed the coloring on some of these printables to match this color, but I didn't know I was going to do that. So what I ended up doing was just inking some paper with this Ripe Persimmon Distress Oxide, and then I stamped "This is the best," and I used the Alie Edwards Sentiment Strip stamp set. This is one of my most used stamp sets. I love this thing. So I just didn't ink up the two arrows on the sides, and I just stamped it and heat embossed it with white so that it could match these, because I wanted it to have the white. I could have just stamped the words in that Ripe Persimmon ink, but I wanted it to have the same feel as these ones, where the strip is saturated with color and the text is white, and so that's why I ended up doing it that way. These other star elements are from past Alie Edwards kits. They might be from Christmas December daily kits or story kits, I can't remember, but I just had them in my stash from Alie Edwards stuff. And then this Halloween Stories of This Year and this pumpkin both came from cards from the October Stories by the Month kit, I believe. This is something that I hand cut out, and the pumpkin was right above it, so I just cut the pumpkin off and used it as an embellishment. And then this was a card that I just cut up and used it kind of as like a little subtitle. So those are the three layouts that I made. I hope that you've enjoyed. It's nice to kind of batch process, because I picked out my photos, then I kind of split up the chipboard to go with which ones I thought it would work well, and then I picked a couple pattern papers, and then I just did each layout like I already had this stuff pulled together for them, almost like making a page kit. But I batch processed everything, and they came together really quickly and easily. So I thought that was fun, and I really love these thick chipboard pieces I made. Again, I still have all of those September ones that I did just to fill up the space on the paper, so I'll keep these in my stash. They're nice and sturdy, they're very cute. The color came out great because I printed on that Epson Premium Presentation paper with the matte finish, and it's like a photo paper, but it has a cardstock feel to it, and so I really like to do my printables on that kind of paper. And I'm really happy with what I completed. So if you have any questions, just leave me a comment in the video description. I'll try to remember to link to any available products that I can find that I used. Here are some photos of the finished projects. I love how they came out. I think I'll definitely batch process some layouts again. If you want to see more photos of past layouts, be sure to check out my Flickr gallery. I have a scrapbook album there on Flickr. I'll leave a link in the video description, but you can also find a link on my YouTube channel homepage. And at the end of this video, I've linked to a few other videos that you might enjoy. One is a print and cut tutorial that I did recently that focuses on creating a print and cut from a cut file rather than from printables. And the second is another recent Halloween layout. So you'll see those linked here coming up. Thank you so much for spending time with me here. If you don't subscribe already, be sure to hit that button so you can see more videos from me each week. And I hope to see you here again very, very soon.